Hello and welcome back to Reimagine Ownership. Today we are thrilled to be joined by Sovereign, the CEO of a global movement called Control. And that's a company that's redefining innovation and technology. Sovereign has a background in finance and operations. He brings a unique strategic vision to Control, shaping the future of the Bitcoin industry. In this episode, we're going to dive a little bit into his journey, his leadership philosophy, and the groundbreaking work happening at Control. And we're so happy to have you here, Sovereign. Let's jump right into it. I want you to share first and foremost your aha moment, how you first went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and specifically how you then went down the Bitcoin Ordinals rabbit hole.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me here. It's always a pleasure to share a little bit about our space to a wider audience and share our viewpoints with people. For me, as you said, I had my background is in finance and technology as well. And so I've always been naturally curious about emerging technologies. And so it was through that course that I came into contact with Bitcoin. And initially it was just an initial curiosity around about the 2016, 2017 time where Coinbase and all of these other platforms existed. People had started experimenting with these cryptocurrencies, and so just out of curiosity, created a few accounts. But the real aha moment for me was when I first transferred a piece of Bitcoin out of a centralized exchange into a self-custody wallet. It's not really until you do that yourself that the light bulb really goes on. For me, it was a realization that I had transferred a piece of value to myself that I now had control over, that was not subject to a bank. So it was not, it was something that didn't close when bank branches close on a weekend. It was something that was available all the time. I could transfer it to whoever I want without restriction, without anybody being able to block me or stop me. Um, and the other interesting aspect of it was that because it's a public blockchain, everybody could see that there was a piece of value in a wallet that I controlled. And so now you were able to verify that you have ownership of funds, but nobody publicly at least could see that it was me. So it was this interesting juxtaposition of having privacy on a public blockchain, which was incredibly interesting. Um, and for me, that was just a massive aha moment that here was a store of value that was not issued by any kind of government. There's no government that could increase the supply of it, reduce the supply of it, create inflation, create recessions. It was something that was just completely independent of any issuer, verified by a global network. Um, and it was just very apparent to me in that moment that this would be the future of finance. Um, and it was really at that moment where I realized that everything that I focused on from that point on had to be about understanding, learning more, and building in this space.
Fascinating. And so if we then fast forward to 2022, early 2023, ordinals theory comes on the scene. It was a bit esoteric. It's something that's digested by a very small subset of crypto followers, and yet you were in that mix. You like that type of evening reading, while the rest of us are watching mainstream television. So tell us what really caught your eye and began to captivate you, because you were already well versed in the NFT ecosystem. So something really must have clicked.
Yeah, I mean, like crypto culture has always interested me a lot more than crypto Wall Street. I would say it's just a very differentiated part of crypto. Crypto, it has its own art, it has its own memes, it has its own language almost, and the the NFT bull run in 2021 really highlighted how digital collectibles can be social hubs in an increasingly digital world. Um, the new town square, where people gather around shared ideals, shared visions. That was demonstrated very clearly to me in the 2021 NFT bull run. But zooming out a little bit, as we headed into 2020, towards the end of 2022, it was a period of rising rates. The Fed had yet again got all of its assumptions wrong on inflation, and it had started to create stress in the banking system. But this is really a theory that I had ever since COVID, and seeing the amount of money supply that was injected into the global economy that completely distorted the playing field in favor of asset owners, um, with regards as opposed to wage earners. And so for me, I've always had this thesis that would set off a domino effect and eventually culminate in the breaking down of the centralized financial system as we know it. And Bitcoin was becoming increasingly, in my view, a safe haven for that situation because of the points that I mentioned earlier. And so, I had always wanted to express this thesis in a cultural way. And so, when Ordinals was launched, uh, it set off multiple light bulbs for me. I'm sure you've been early and late to investments in your life, Dan. I certainly have. I was relatively late to Bitcoin. 2017 is like way later than some of the early participants. I was a couple of years late to Ethereum. By that time, but Ordinals was uh, a thing where I immediately saw the value proposition because you have this immense cultural white space that had now opened up on the largest, most decentralized blockchain on the planet. And you now had the ability to record culture and tell stories on this on the canvas of this innovation. Um, and so it provided the opportunity for me to be able uh, to convey this macro thesis. And the one simple idea I had was, why not, or wouldn't it be amazing to tell the story of Bitcoin and Bitcoin's place in our future right on Bitcoin itself? And so, amongst other many other like features of ordinals, rare sats being another one which immediately stood out to me as a differentiator. It immediately uh, it immediately made sense to me. Um, and then I guess just for the audience, like what is the innovation here? Bitcoin has historically never been seen as a very flexible chain. It's relatively old technology in crypto terms. It is the oldest blockchain and quite unwieldy and inflexible from a code point of view. And that is why newer chains like Ethereum and Solana have enjoyed this period of having culture associated with them and cultural projects on them. Bitcoin has never been able to have that type of flexibility. And ordinals and ordinal theory is an innovation which uses a space in a piece of code that has always existed in Bitcoin, but able to be used in a very organized and an efficient way to store media. That could be pictures, that could be film, it could be games, it could be anything. Um, and so that is really the innovation that was delivered with Ordinals theory. And amongst many things, I think the real innovation or the real game changing aspect of Ordinals is that it woke the developer community up to the possibility of having apps and utility on Bitcoin that has only previously existed on other chains. And other chains have always been criticized for their security, for their lack of decentralization, etc. And now you have the possibility of creating all of this value on the one chain that everybody has consensus on is the most secure, is the most decentralized on the planet.
I love that explanation. I also love the ethos of the control movement. You and some colleagues got together and you decided to embark on what has become a very audacious proposition. You have worked with an incredibly talented stencil artist named One Penny Piece. I admire his work. And I want you to share more about that ethos because when I think back to the very first public event that Control helped design and executed, it was by all means audacious, dare I say outrageous. I recall a small group of you visiting a Federal Reserve installation in Miami-Dade County, and you were not greeted like liberators. According to those early reports, there were lots of armed gunmen that rapidly appeared when your posse appeared on that front lawn. Share a little bit about what went into creating the early days of Control with that bold and brazen attitude that has continued to inform the journey to date.
Yeah. So I guess zooming out a little bit, I want to tell you a little bit about what our drivers are and what really propels us to do the things that you're describing. We feel immensely passionate about the the deck of cards being stacked against normal people. Ever since COVID, and this has accentuated the gap between the have and the have-nots has just increased, and the cost of living crisis has started to really accentuate this even more. And so it's not a surprise that every year people are waking up in the new year and having to work twice as hard just to stay in the same place. It's no surprise that younger people are finding it increasingly difficult to afford a home and having to work multiple jobs just to make rent. These are not issues that we play around with or make fun of or use as some kind of marketing campaign. These are issues that are incredibly serious. We feel that they're also imperceptible because it's something like a slow burn, boil the frog kind of analogy, where if everybody is in the same kind of boat, you sense these changes less, but they're happening year upon year, and they're really starting to reach breaking point. And so we feel passionately that the source of all of these issues is centralized finance, and that finance should have no place in backroom politics, and decisions that impact all of us so meaningfully should not be weaponized and politicized in the way that they currently are. You're already seeing, currencies being weaponized against other countries, interest rates, etc. It's all playing out in this way that really makes the lives of normal people very difficult. And we think that Bitcoin right now is the best solution that we have. And so for us, the culture is a way to raise awareness. It is a way to make people sit up and take notice about the situation that's all around us. And we feel that art and culture is the way to deliver that message. It's like, to be honest with you, nobody really cares about the technology. It's not the way that you deliver an important message. The the way to, if you can make somebody's pulse get faster, if you can make somebody's heartbeat get faster, they'll never forget you. And so for us, this is simply a way of telling a very, very important story and delivering an important message. And so when we started Control, we tried to figure out, like, what is the best way that we can, the most creative way that we can drive home this message about fiat and its impact. And so we created this concept of a funeral for fiat currency, and we landed up, four of us at the Bitcoin Miami conference. We hired a hearse, we hired pallbearers, we had a casket full of cash, we hired an entire gospel choir, and we rolled up outside Bitcoin Miami and we stormed into the conference. It was a little bit scary because people in Miami, as you know, have guns. But that's how we roll. And luckily enough, as we smashed through the metal detectors before anybody could get to us, people had their phones out, and the whole thing just went viral. And we then proceeded to invite people all over the globe to film their own versions of a fiat funeral. And we received something like 700 or 800 submissions in order to access our first art drop, which was the Genesis 404 collection that we dropped in 23. And so, that's something that the ordinal space has never really forgotten. It's kind of emblazoned on people's brains, and that's exactly the effect that we have. I'm lucky enough to lead a team of probably the most creative people, talented people in crypto, and our mission and the thing that drives us every day is, how do we make people feel something? If we can do that, then maybe, just maybe, it piques people's curiosity and they decide to interact with the technology, buy a little bit of Bitcoin, hold it in self-custody, all of these things that are further downstream. But the thing that comes first is the culture. And we've gone on to do several others of these activations that have just built upon our work that we've done previously. And we're widely seen as probably one of the most creative teams that's working in crypto right now, which I'm incredibly proud about.
No doubt about that. Certainly one of the most daring teams that's working in crypto and the ordinal space. And that's demonstrated, again, not once, but over multiple occasions. We've seen your creative team putting together work that is driving home a message that I think people innately are internalizing, even if they're not fully digesting all of these macro events that you're alluding to, the weaponization of money supply. But it's otherwise hard for me to explain why average Americans have gone to Costco in record numbers over just the last year and are not just buying large quantities of toilet paper, large quantities of Kirkland products that they sell proudly at Costco, but buying bars of gold, not cheap gold, $2,000 per bar gold, putting that into their shopping cart, going home. Who knows where they're storing it? It probably is going under the mattress. But I think that speaks to this sense of concern, that resonant fear that people do implicitly understand. The printing machine cannot go on forever. It cannot go unchecked. This is a topic that you've addressed, many others have addressed, and now we're beginning to see a more concerted focus in Washington and other capitals who recognize that uh, federal budget deficits can get out of hand. It can jeopardize sovereign ratings. It's the reason that gold prices continue to push up. And there are many other factors. So tell us a little bit about your apostles, that community that you alluded to that began to form alongside Control in 2023 and has continued to grow today. What is the composition of those individuals, and who do you seek to bring into your community in the year ahead?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think if you look at the control community now, it is a mix of very early hardcore Bitcoiners, people that are extremely strict about their self custody. Some of these community members are also doing self mining, or as we call kind of they call it nerd mining, but they're running these small miners inside their homes. Which I don't know if you saw the news, but day before yesterday there was one of these miners that struck an entire Bitcoin block, and so a $200 to $300 device won Bitcoin that was roughly $250,000 worth of Bitcoin, just sitting there in somebody's apartment. These people are also very concerned about making sure that the Bitcoin network is secured, and they add to the security there. And we have a bunch of people that we've onboarded that really have never really participated in Bitcoin before, and they just love what we do from a creative standpoint. And so our mission really is to onboard as many of these new people as possible. Um, we see ourselves as initially targeting the crypto curious, and so people that have already open to experimenting with crypto, and maybe holding a little bit with it, and inviting them in through the culture. But our longer term goal and ambition is to really target people that, as you mentioned, are right now going into Costco and buying gold. And I love that gold analogy because for me, that is an example of people that already understand that there's a problem. I've always seen Bitcoin as something that has a massive marketing problem. For me, Bitcoin is a solution, but nobody really understands what the problem is yet. And when I see people going out and buying gold, it makes me optimistic that people are starting to understand the problem. And so once somebody's gone out and bought gold, the leap from actually buying gold to Bitcoin in that person's mind is actually very small, because I can explain to them that Bitcoin has all the properties of gold, except it's easier to store, it's easier to transport, it's much more secure. You can trade it 24/7. There's a global, like, one price globally for this digital gold. So that leap is much smaller than explaining to somebody that there is this huge currency debasement problem, geopolitical risks, all of these things, and you need to park some of your wealth in something which is not actually connected to or controlled by or issued by a particular government. That's very important. And um, so that's the ambition. The ambition is that control becomes the first touch point for people that for whom this penny is starting to drop, and they start to understand that yeah, there is a need to safeguard my assets, but I can do it in a way, or I can do it with a community that is very familiar to me if I have interacted with street culture, normal culture, things that I know and recognize. It's also why we were at NFT Paris just recently, and to add to our previous activations, this was another level up for us. We actually created a skateboarding half pipe right in the middle of the conference, inside the conference hall, and we worked
That's
with
normal.
some yeah, we worked with some incredibly talented local youngsters who just amazingly talented skateboarders and BMX bikers who stormed into the conference for us and then performed all of these amazing tricks on this half pipe that we built inside the conference. But the reason why we did it symbolically is to drive home this message that actually we are the skate culture of the 1990s. If you look at, I give you an example of, a brand like Supreme, that was set up by James Jebbia in 1994 New York, which was still not the safest place in the world to be, and also not really the mecca or the hub of skateboarding. All of that was happening in California. But there was this small committed group of people that set up and represented this culture, and they were much misunderstood. As you probably recall, in New York, skateboarding was banned in a lot of different areas, and it was, you could get arrested for skateboarding in the wrong place. And so, crypto and Bitcoin is really in the same place. We've definitely turned a page of now not being arrested for interacting with this technology, and so, I think the regulatory page has turned. But in terms of kind of the level of understanding, we're still very much a subculture. And as you know, the subcultures of today is the mainstream of tomorrow. And that's what makes me really excited about building in this space at this moment.
Super well said. I often think about not just one community, but a series of communities that are building in similar ways in similar spaces. Shed some light on the collaborative nature of what's happened across the Ordinals ecosystem, and, if you wish, highlight one or two other projects that you think are particularly resonant in different ways from the ethos of control.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most exciting things about being part of the ordinal space right now. It's incredibly pioneering. When we started, back in 23, it was we were trading ordinals literally on spreadsheets. There was a lot of trust involved. There was not much trustlessness and transparency. And those early innovators, those early pioneers, are have largely remained in the space, and it's been great to see the space become more trustless, in the sense that the tooling around the space has improved a lot. The marketplaces and platforms around the space have evolved a lot. Um, and as I said earlier, um, the real game changer has been that Bitcoin is now seen as a place to build apps, to build protocols, and innovate. That's something that never really existed before. And so the developer mindshare and the investment dollars that are coming into the space is incredibly exciting. Um, I think in terms of the earlier projects that launched alongside us, there are a couple of cultural meme-based projects like Node Monks and Bitcoin Puppets that are, mimetic and really steeped in the culture of those early days. OMB is another example of a project that, explores similar themes to us. And then you have, as an example, the Taproot Wizards, who are minting very soon. they have taken it upon themselves to make Bitcoin as flexible as possible and try to see if they can drive through this innovation called OpCat, which would add functionality to Bitcoin and make it a lot more flexible, and to building tooling, for example, DeFi apps and other things that exist on other chains. Um, so so yeah, that, and then also I would say that there are very early signs of some generative artists that are coming into the space. Every conference I go to, I see more and more artists that are exploring the space. There's an artist called Harto who is who's incredibly popular and creating great generative art. There is um, an artist called Billy Resty who's also doing some amazing generative artwork. Um, and typically, when you look at the space, there is these artists tend to also be incredible technicians. They understand the technology really well, and are able to manipulate it to create their visions. I do think that barrier to entry is getting lower and lower every year, and that is why we've built our platform called Inscriber, which is a platform that is dedicated to helping artists and other projects on board onto Bitcoin, completely turnkey. We will do all of the work for you from start to finish, including taking your project to market. All you have to do is bring your best idea and your best art, and leave the rest to us. So, that is specifically why we have built that tooling.
I love the fact that what started as a cultural movement has grown into actual business lines, right? That can be revenue generative, that can ultimately sustain themselves. And uh, I'm optimistic that there are big things still to come for control that extend far beyond what folks have seen to date. Before we wrap up, just share a little bit about what's in the hopper, what you are most excited about for 2025 vis-a-vis your team, and the various ways that listeners can engage with control now and in the future. Where do they find you? When you're not lurking around money center banks and other traditional financial institutions.
Yeah, so seizecontrol.io is our website. You can also find us on X, which is our main platform, um, just under Seize Control. And this year we aim to open up some newer avenues of communications. We feel like we should have a communication channel on TikTok and Instagram, as these are very much um, very high growth channels, and actually dovetail very very nicely with what we're building. Um, in the immediate future, we have a physical collectible drop that is happening in the next coming days. Our For this activation in NFT Paris, we produced a small batch of hoodies. One of which I'm wearing now. And Penny, our artist, produced a physical collectible spray can called Pest Control, harking back to the Andy Warhol Campbell soup cans, but his own spin on it. And that Pest Control can is there to help you to fumigate centralized finance, obviously. They were incredibly popular. We totally sold out of our supply that we had at NFT Paris. There's been a high demand for it, and so we are launching an online web store with a very limited run of both of those items over the course of this week and next week. And then we are
I'm going to
heading
need
straight
one.
into
Definitely going to need one.
absolutely. Um, and then we
Tell
are
me where to wire
also
my
imminently.
Bitcoin.
Well, I'm happy that you have some. And then we're immediately dovetailing into our next digital experience, which is called Grid Wars. Um, this is a game that we have built, an on-chain game that we have built, which allows people to effectively build your own or create your own PFP through a sequence of stages. And so, in that sense, it is a collaboration between you, the collector or the participant, and One Penny Piece, our artist. He has created all these traits. You will go through this game, and if you survive through all of these stages, you will select the traits that you love best and arrive at the end at a PFP that effectively you have created with traits that he has supplied. But the real goal at the end of this game is to have a prize of a rare sat, and have your PFP inscribed on this rare sat, which is an incredibly rare digital artifact of the Bitcoin ecosystem. I won't go down that rabbit hole because it's a whole other topic. Um, and so those two things are in our immediate future, but this year is also really about expanding control, um, beyond the digital culture, beyond the art space, um, and exploring tooling that will assist people in what we call the post fiat future. We want to play our part in delivering the this future that we talk about, and so that we're not just simply talking about it in words, but we are taking action and delivering tooling and delivering technology that can help people in this future um, that we perceive.
I love every bit of it. I love the design. I love the mission. We know it's right. We know it's early, but I feel very fortunate to have been up close, with a front row seat for so much of what Control has built. I love my Control 404 that hangs prominently on my wall, and I look forward to seeing what you guys embark upon and some of these projects that you've just alluded to, as well as rocking some of that merch. So we're thrilled that you were able to join today. We look forward to having you back on. And in the interim, we encourage people to follow Seize Control on whatever social channels they traffic in, and to stay safe. And remember, fiat is not the future. Thanks,
Absolutely. Thanks
Sovereign.
very much for having me on
Catch you soon.
again. Happy to hop on anytime. Take care.